Hi there, I'm Donald. Welcome to my channel, Lost in Livi. Livi? Livi, well that's an abbreviation, a local abbreviation for the town of Livingston in the county of West Lothian in central Scotland. Livingston was the fifth of 5 new towns that were built in Scotland in the years following the Second World War. And it was developed originally starting in the 1960s with the Livingston Development Corporation. This was all farmland. And to the west and to the east we had the shale oil industry with mining and quarrying and oil works. Livingston New Town, the boundaries of the new town encompass 3 villages. There's the village of Bell's Quarry, the village of Deans and the village of Livingston, which is now called Livingston Village to distinguish it from Livingston, the town, the new town. So what's Lost in Livi all about? Is it about me wandering Livingston and getting lost? Or is it something to do that harks back to the early days of Livingston New Town when the planners set out the layout of the new town's road network? The road network comprised a couple of arterial roads that fed in turn district roads. The districts were centred around what were previously the farmsteadings or the villages that were encompassed in the town. And off those district roads, which kind of encircled each district, were cul-de-sac style of developments where the housing, the industrial development, the business parks were built. They were built as a series of cul-de-sacs, so there were no through roads, no rat runs. Made it kind of safe for the people living and working and playing in and around the housing with access. But that was kind of radical thinking back in those days, and there were a lot of roundabouts and all the cul-de-sacs used to confuse drivers, and Livingston in its early days had quite a reputation for strangers to the town finding themselves lost. But I don't think that's what Lost in Livi is about. It's about me losing myself in what was here before the new town. Because one of the radical things, in my mind radical, that the new town developers did was they looked at the original roads and paths and lanes that connected the villages and the farmsteads, and they retained those paths as a traffic-free shared use path network. 60 years ago that was radical thinking. And the way that they constructed the road network, where it conflicted with the paths and the lanes that were there before and being redesignated as traffic-free path network, was that they built a series of underpasses and overbridges. The result is that in the town of Livingston you can drive around it. It's a wee bit convoluted sometimes, but you can also walk or cycle from just about anywhere in Livingston to just about anywhere else. And when you do that, you discover a different Livingston. You discover nature and wildlife, you discover bits of walls and bits of buildings and things that suggest what was there before. I've got very interested in it. I moved here in the 1980s with my wife and our first daughter, who was still in her pram, just a few months old. And one of the big draws for us to the town was being able to walk to anywhere that we needed services. There were shops, the doctor, the dentist, the post office. All of those things were within easy walking distance, and we didn't have to cross any roads, we didn't have to interact with traffic. It was something that was just quite unique at that time, and that was a big draw to us. And I've always promised myself that I was going to explore the path network. I only ever really used the bit that made use of it to us. And I always meant to explore the path network further and discover more about Livingston's roots. And it wasn't really until a couple of years ago when I came to towards retirement, that I realised that if I didn't do something in my retirement, I would finish up sitting on a couch vegetating in front of daytime television. There's not really anything worse that I can think of than daytime telly. And I made a commitment to myself to get out on my bike. I've always cycled, but to get out on my bike and explore the network, explore the paths, find out where they went, what was there before, what hints there were of the past. And there's a lot to discover. I enjoy maps, and I like looking through, studying old maps. And I found an online map which overlaid an Ordnance Survey map going back to Victorian times, overlaid on top of a current OpenStreetMap. And it gives a great opportunity to just see where the roads were before, where they still are. And a lot of those roads that were before still are the paths that I use daily. So over the last couple of years I've been just using the path network and cycling. I use two bikes. The bike I'm on today, I'm actually taking a little detour on my way to the shops, to the supermarket, to get the week's shopping. So I have this small cargo e-bike, and I also have a wee Brompton folding bike. And both of those bikes are great for getting around the town. So I thought to myself, I'd really like to share what I know or what I've discovered. I'd even hope to connect with people who maybe know more than I do, and there are many who would know more than I do. And I'd love to hear from anybody if I've put some comment in my video that's wrong or that somebody knows more about. I'd love to know more about that. But apart from that, I'm also keen to encourage active travel for walking, cycling and wheeling, as it's known. All the paths that are in Livingston, a lot of them were developed in the 1960s, and so the construction of the paths were built to the standards that were in use in those days. Nowadays, planning and construction of paths for shared use is much more acknowledging of the needs of wheeled users, people who have assistance needs, and who may use adapted bicycles, tricycles, scooters, whatever, to get about. And one of the things I do try to point out when I'm going round all the paths in these videos is to point out where improvement is needed. Try to point out as well where, say, a wheeled user, somebody on a mobility scooter, would find their progress impaired or perhaps even prevented altogether, which is not good. This is my first attempt at videoing, recording audio, using video editing software. And some of these videos are maybe a little bit rough. There are 24 core paths, and I set out to deal with them alphabetically. So the first few have some rough edges. They're a little bit experimental with whether or not I include a commentary or captions or fancy editing with still photos. And I'm thinking of re-editing or maybe even reshooting some of those early videos. But I hope that the videos that I do have up are useful. I've created a playlist for all 24 of the paths. Hope to encourage people to get out on their bikes and to find their own way in Livi. So thanks for listening to me if you've got this far, and hope that you will enjoy the Path Network and enjoy the Livingston that's lost to folk who don't ever get out of their cars. It's quite a different experience. So there we have it. Thanks for joining me, lost in Livi.